Log on to kcbzradio.com and check the schedule for Situation and Circumstance Live, complete with music, live phone call access, and additional audio and programming. Anthony and TBT would love for you to be a part of the live broadcast and recording of Situation and Circumstance at kcbzradio.com.
Situation and circumstance. Fight for wisdom, not ignorance. Trying to avoid it is not a lonely dance. Can we see each other with only a glance? Situations and circumstances. Fight for wisdom, not ignorance. Trying to avoid it is not a lonely dance. Can we see each other with only a glance?
Cake mixing, race mixes, matrix, kill the witches, 3 digits, made of 6s, KKK.
Once again! Oh yeah, once again, welcome to kcbzradio.com, and of course, this is Situation and Circumstances. I am your host, Mr. Classiq, aka CE. Anthony, all these variances in my name. That's what happens when you grow up in such a way that you have to sometimes change your real name. Then you have no more warrants, and you can use your real name again. And then you have to kind of balance between. Anyway, that's a whole nother show. Please give it up for TBT. That's the best team. Julius and Mariah, or Mariah and Julius. You can say it in either fashion.
Hi, y'all. It's Mariah Leybah here.
Hey.
What up?
That's Julius.
You gonna say something?
I am gonna say something.
Say something.
No, I ain't gonna say nothing. Julius don't want to give you that whole, like, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna, hey, what? And Julius like, what's up? But it's okay, there's millionaires who use such short catchphrases like Russell Simmons. He said, thanks for coming out and God bless, good night. That was it. He didn't do all that other extra talking. I'm an extra talker, so
You don't say.
Are you guys making fun? I feel a little bullied. So here we are I'm excited. We're at our last part of race obligations. We're not on the last show by no means, but our last part of race obligations, which has been a 4-part series on just generally what are one's obligations to race. And of course, 4 series is nowhere near enough to talk about such a big topic, but we tried to narrow down and get to the gist of a lot of it. We really wanted to design safety inside of the uncomfortable conversations. The theory being that many of us don't have the vocabulary to even take the first step of testing the racial waters with a curious toe. And so we want to use a platform, or at least we wanted to set up a platform that allows people to just dive in, whether uncomfortable or not, and be socially challenged in these conversations while still trying to maintain some respect. We talked about marrying outside of your race. We talked about what happens when you marry outside of your race. Well, you have children that are multicultural and biracial. So we talked about that. And that's Julius's by the way, just so y'all know, that's him going, Don't worry, he ain't gonna say cracker today. He might. It's a distinction. He will. You think he will, Mariah? He gonna say cracker at least one.
It might be his top 5 favorite words.
Somebody's gonna tune in. Look, Mariah, somebody gonna tune into this show, and one day he not gonna say cracker, and they say the show was good, but
there was no cracker.
Nobody said cracker, and so I don't know. I don't know if you lost your sponsors.
And they're gonna say with the R too.
Oh boy. We all actually miss each other too. So we're anyway back. What? Let's rewind. We're back here once again, and so we're gonna close. This is our last part of race obligations, and so we're gonna kind of recap some of the things that we talked about already, as well as talk about a little bit more. And so as we jump into that. Let's see. Did I forget to say this? We sit in that sweet spot of perpetual metamorphosis, layered with perspective. All over the world, there is a situation and circumstance. And so as you think about that and you prepare for the rest of the show, let's get into this, to a little bit of music, right?
Log on to kcbzradio.com and check the schedule for Situation and Circumstance Live, complete with music, live phone call access, and additional audio and programming, Anthony and TBT would love for you to be a part of the live broadcast and recording of Situation and Circumstance at kcbzradio.com.
All right. So that was just a clip from Raising Equity about what stereotyping is. I love how she said that it's a shortcut that traps our thinking and it limits us to see others in their whole humanity, because it's exactly how I feel whenever I was being stereotyped my entire life. I feel like she said, it's a visual assumption just because it's based off of other visual assumptions that people have seen, right? So like I know for me, the biggest stereotype that I ever had was like I'm exotic, because people don't know, quote unquote, what I am. And so
I'm sorry, when you say what you are, and I know that there's some listeners that have listened and they know what you mean by that. They're like, oh, because she's multiracial. Mm-hmm. But is that what you mean when you say?
So yeah, that's what I was going to go into. Is like when they say what, they want to ask what I am, what is my background, what is my cultural background. So they don't just see me as a human being and want to learn about me. They see me as exotic. Therefore, I must be into all of these certain things, or men perceive me a certain way growing up and hypersexualize me like big time. And any guy that I ever came in contact with that was near my age or saw me as an object to be desired, it was always exotic and sexualized. So I want to see like how have you been, or do you remember the first time that you were ever stereotyped? And do you agree with this definition too of it?
Well, I'm glad you asked. I think about one of the many things I'm blessed to do in this world is as I work with a lot of children, and so I'm always having to simplify. Excuse me, let me not say that. It makes me feel like there's a bit of adultism in that. Not always having to simplify, but choosing to simplify things for not only the children, but even the adults that are in the room at the time. And so when I think about stereotype and I think about this version of it, I think about that if you say something about someone, or excuse me, if you say something about a particular culture and it's not true for one person in that culture, then it's a stereotype. Mm-hmm. And so some would be if we say, well, all black people like chicken and watermelon, and there's a black person who doesn't like chicken and watermelon, then it's a stereotype. If we say all Mexicans like tacos, and there's a Mexican who doesn't like tacos, then it's a stereotype. It doesn't mean that there aren't several Mexicans who like tacos or several black people who like chicken and watermelon. But what it does, in fact, mean is that if it doesn't translate to something that covers the entire race, then it's a stereotype. And so for me, if I might, Mariah, if I might go to not necessarily maybe the first one, but what's resonating with me is the last one. And we talked about this on one of the other shows here at kcbzradio.com called Generation X. And we talked about how I had experienced this place maybe a few weeks ago where someone asked me if black people could float. Okay, so then that's a stereotype, right? And so then I found myself in this position where it was like, okay, well, now I got to take I felt uncomfortable, but I had to take my own advice. I always say, well, we're a little sensitive about when someone's just trying to learn a little bit more about us. And so if we don't, try to engage some of these conversations, then what happens is we leave people to their own devices, we leave them to their own assumptions, and then that can be a lot worse when we leave them to their own assumptions. So I took my own advice and I said, you know what? Hey,
I'm having trouble with this.
Yes.
If y'all can see my face right now, it's so scrunched, because how are you going to ask a human being if a whole race, a whole culture, because race is a stupid made up thing, a whole people can float? What are you saying? Because for me, you just that's dehumanizing. That's what that is for me. Because continue. I just had to share that.
But here again, I'm thinking, well, okay, so now, mind you, there was a room full of people when this happened, and all of those people happened to be European American.
White. Right?
Yeah, but there was only one cracker, and it was the person who was asking me the question. The other people were European American. This person ended up. Now I didn't know she was a cracker. I thought, well, hey, she's asking me this beautiful question, and it was some discomfort there, but it was okay. Well, I've been this color all my life, and I'm used to these kinds of questions. So I began to tell her different things. I said, well, you know what? When I was a kid, one of my favorite things to do was to float. My uncle would throw silver dollars out there, these big coins, and we would float at the top, kind of hover, float at the top, and look down. And so I said I haven't done it in a while at this age, but certainly, yeah, I can float. And then she said, well, are you sure?
Oh.
I said, well, yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm sure. Well, she said, well, were you moving your arms at all or your legs?
Lord have mercy.
So here's what happens, right? And so, so I went off, and I won't go all into this, but I went all into the details of why these stereotypes happened with African Americans, from being brought over on the boats and having these huge metal balls, kind of like old Bugs Bunny cartoons, where they would attach these huge metal balls and chains and attach those to the legs of the sick Africans that were being brought over, so they wouldn't affect the others, and they would kind of dump those in the ocean alive. And so that's part of it. Then we think about being disenfranchised and in these locations where we weren't able to get in the water. And if a black person got into the swimming pool, then now the whole water is tainted and all these different things. Then I even brought her all the way up to more current stuff. And then there's some people who, some of them are black and some of them are not, who just don't want to get their hair wet because they spent a lot of money getting whatever they had done to it. And that water would counterbalance what they were seeking from it, right? So after doing all of that, you know what she said at the end? She said, well, okay, but I'm going to still have to research it because I know that. Now here's the thing. You know why she had to research it? Because apparently she was taught that by the person who taught her to be a professional lifeguard. Right? She was taught it. So that's the version of stereotype that resonates with me the most right now. And before I pass the mic, so to speak, I want to say that the reason why I didn't call the rest of the people in the room crackers as opposed to just that one, thanks again, Julius, for allowing us to just fluidly use that word, cracker.
It's a good word.
Is because the other people that were in the room, the other white people that were in the room, I could feel and tell that it hurt their heart. Not only did it hurt them, but after this person left the room, individuals that were there, they came and they were crying and they were really upset. And sure, should they have stood up? Yes, but maybe no, because they didn't know what standing up looks like.
Are you sure?
The only reason I'm sure is because later on this carried on into a larger conversation. And to be honest, if it wasn't for that cracker, there's a whole population of people, and I'm making sure to say things carefully as to not point out who this actually was. But there's a whole population of people right now that, as a result of this, they are going to integrate some of this diversity and inclusion and some of these things so that this doesn't have to happen. And it turns out that lots of people, whether they were from the LGBTQ, et cetera, or whether, or whether they were, so many people felt so many ways about this person that never knew how to speak about it without seeming like now they're the one who's like, oh, you're just against, or yeah, everybody say, way to take over the conversation, Anthony.
No, that was good.
Yeah.
You gotta talk about him.
It's better than just saying, yeah, I've had that once, because that's real life. This is real life. And that's something that happens around the world daily to millions and millions and millions of people. And so knowing how to have those conversations and not have confrontation, especially when people have been taught confrontation, to be able to see somebody be so human in being able to take that with such grace and not, because you could have come at her in a different way.
Everybody said that too. They were like, what did you say? Did you hinder her astronomical self?
And there's nothing wrong with that. You could have came at her in the same way she came at you. You could have came at her real foul and nobody would like be upset at you.
But would
you
it
deserve
be
that
effective? I think that's what it is. Is it effective?
We have to allow
in,
ourselves to be human. Like black people are always taught to be well mannered. We're taught to stay in line, boy, while everybody else gets to wild out. So even if it's not effective in that moment, we have to allow ourselves to just like be human.
Right.
We're like caged birds sometimes. We're like, oh, you can't talk. When somebody call you a nigga, just answer politely. You know, when the cop pull you over, just yes sir, massa. Like nah, that's nah. We have the right
for sure
to speak up.
And I think
when a cracker presents himself.
I feel like you could do both. Be like, have the impulse to have that like humanness and be like, whoa, like I say what you gotta say. I don't agree, or whatever you feel, or like that. I just want to let you know that hurt me, or whatever it is that you felt because of that person. I feel like not only do we have the right, like we are humans, we should do that. Period. Feel our feelings and express them and tell somebody how we feel. So like in that moment, being able to tell that woman like, firstly, that is not okay, or however you would say that, and also share with her how you shared. However you shared with her, word for word, whatever you said, but being able to express your feelings and also create movement.
I think both of you are right. Or let's change that, because here on this show, it's not about being right or wrong, but what the situation and circumstance is. And I think this is actually, to be honest, this is a perfect time for that whole situation and circumstance. So that situation that happened to me wasn't the first time it happened to me. How could it be? I'm at this age, and I am African American, Pan African, black, all of the different et ceteras. And how could it, so it's not the first time for me. I almost want to say that I've grown, but if I say that I've grown, then it implies that people who still feel the way that I felt, if people feel how I would have felt several years ago, or quite a bit of years ago, how I would have handled it, I don't want to sound like I'm saying they haven't grown. And so that's where I kind of feel both things here. I kind of feel like if I had took the opportunity to say, you know what, I don't appreciate that. And furthermore, maybe you should shut the cluck up. If I had decided that that's and went along, and whatever else would have came with that, I don't necessarily feel like that would have been wrong. However, that would have been the me that would have presented that at a certain time in my life. And the point that I'm at this point is, I saw the bigger picture of there was one cracker in the midst of several European Americans that could have learned and gained from this experience. I didn't learn or gain anything from it because I've been black. So I didn't learn anything from that. I didn't gain anything from that unless we look at I gained the ability to be able to now use this event that was kind of hurtful. I didn't even realize when it happened, I didn't even know I was hurt from it while it was happening because I'm used to that kind of, But what did happen was later on when I got to reevaluate it, there was some pain involved with it because it happened to me in a professional setting where we were just professionals at lunch. That's all that we were all at work, and it was just at lunch, and I just so happened to be the only Pan-African person there. And so when these things, so it's just, I don't know. I think that this is a situation that certainly is our namesake here of situation and circumstance. I don't believe there's a right and wrong in terms of how it is handled from that perspective. It is a right and wrong potentially in terms of this person asking who was unreachable.
Yeah. Now, do you get tired of being black people are the only demographic who gets told, like if a woman was disrespected publicly, no one would tell a woman, oh, you shouldn't have responded like that. If a Native American person was like, people would let them wild out. Jewish people go let Jewish people wild out if they were being oppressed. Black people are always, no, you should have handled it this way. Should have handled it that way. When somebody you like wild out on a chick, and the chick wilds out back, rightfully, people are like, yeah, good job. That you should have wild out in that way. If a Native American, somebody was like dogging a Latino person, it was like, oh, you're a beaner, whatever. And the Latino person got at him, people are like, yeah, good, you stood up. But as soon as a black person's like, oh, no, do it the way Dr. King did it. Do it that way. Don't sag your pants and talk about that. You got to do it this way. You got to do it my way. And I'm just tired of black people being the only demographic that we have to do things the politically correct way. That's like played out, and it hasn't worked.
Do you feel like it was a politically correct? I know you. I have a feeling that Mariah want to say something about the woman part of that, but I'm also thinking, do you feel like by me handling the way that I described as opposed to the way that I might have done it a long time ago? Do you feel like or how is that landing?
No, I don't think. I think you acted the way that you needed to act, and that's what I'm here for. I'm all for freedom. But I'm not for the conversation after, in which black people are told you should not have acted that way. That's what I'm not for.
Oh,
so
gotcha.
however you acted in that moment is right. If I would have acted and tore her up, I don't need to be told right after, dang, Ju, you shouldn't have did it that way.
I see.
You know, like we all cry. To tell somebody that they shouldn't cry that way is wrong. You know, such as like revolting, you know, or riots. People are like, oh, don't do it that way. That's a form of crying. That's me expressing myself in that moment. You might not agree. You might not have did it my way. But who are you to say that I should not have cried the way that I cried? I'm responding to something that has been done to me. And that's human-like. So, no, I'm not upset. I don't think it was politically correct form that you did so. I just don't like the fact that we're always told, like, don't do it that way.
I'm really anxious, and thank you for clarifying that, because that does make a difference. And I'm anxious to hear. I know you heard that part. I know you heard. I heard two parts, but I didn't want to get on Julius because he said,
do your thing.
He said chicks, and that sounds like some oppressive language.
That's oppressive, huh?
No, look, we are all learning here, but I'm curious. I'm curious with you, Mariah, how that landed with you. When he said that we're the only ones, and by we, I mean African Americans, Pan-African Black people, and he said we're the only ones that are having to apologize for this, which sat well. And then there was this.
I think it was more of a build-up because every one that you were listing, it was like I was seeing a visual of someone in my family or someone in my nearby neighborhood who's a friend, a family. So because every one of these is a part of me, and so I see these moments where people are being told that you shouldn't be doing it like that. You shouldn't be so angry. Don't do that. Basically saying don't feel your feelings, which is not okay. We have to feel our feelings. We are human beings. We feel feelings, and so to tell us not to do that isn't okay. And I think there are in these different cultures being told that. I think it's more pronounced in the community that you're speaking, like Pan-African Black community, how you said it. I don't know which word that you used. But in this community where it's more, it's polarized especially for media to show it that way too. And so I think it's more prominent to be seen that way, because it does definitely happen in these other communities. Absolutely. I think about it all the time. I'm always thinking about like, why is it that the Black community, so it's always in the media, it's like the Black community this, the Black community that. It's like, why is it always against, why is colorism, why this color, why this
color? Because it makes a lot of money for other people that don't look like us.
Right. Well, what I'm thinking though too is, okay, so like I'm thinking, so they didn't choose the very first people that the Native Americans, right? That's still, things are still happening in Native American culture, being oppressed, right?
Yes.
But it's not voiced and like amplified in the ways that it has for the Black community. And so it's interesting of like how it's gone down this route and everything's tied to that. So it's like everything's put on this certain community to where it's like the hole to dig out is even greater and greater and greater and greater to try and like say no, like I just want to be a human being.
Right. And I think some of that, what I'll say is not just the Black community, but the Black community depending on where they're at in this world, right? So that's certainly a American thing that happens with the Black community, and that happens in Australia. Well, the polarization and everything that all of this. So
you think that's native to Black Americans?
No. So that's why I'm mentioning a few of them. So I'm saying that here in America that happens differently than it happens in Europe, in actual Europe. It happened, and we're a young country too. And then it happens in Australia, very polarizing, kind of like it happens here. But then there's other. So just wanting to say that because our audience is all over the world. You guys hear that? Our audience is all over the world. As a matter of fact, what we're going to do right now is we're going to get into a little bit more music. We're going to come back and talk about a lot more. So a little music, a lot more coming to you from KCBZradio.com. Of course, this is Situation and Circumstance. You gonna dig that?
Log on to KCBZradio.com and check the schedule for Situation and Circumstance Live, complete with music, live phone call access, and additional audio and programming. Anthony and TBT would love for you to be a part of the live broadcast and recording of Situation and Circumstance at KCBZradio.com.
Oh, man. That's Mr. Classiq talking.
That's me talking.
Man, y'all listen to Situations and Circumstance at KCBZ Radio. I got to emphasize the C because I got that. I talk black. As we just got done here.
Oh.
KC.
How do a black person say C? And how do a cracker say C? How do a black person say C? And how do a European American say C? And I'm just curious.
It's like we say bathroom. It's a bathroom.
Right.
You know, or refrigerator. You're kind of missing the R-E before it.
We say
so
this, we say that, not
that.
this and that. Okay,
Exactly.
go ahead, please continue.
So you are listening to KCBZglobal.com, chambersradio.com, KCBZ Destination Global. Music is life. Life is love.
Yes, you got through it.
We also taking calls in a few at 502-509-5229.
Again, that's
502-509. KCBZ.
KCBZ.
To kind of piggyback off what Mariah kind of opened the segment with is when's the first time you've been stereotyped. And Mr. Classiq, he had a pretty lengthy answer, which is cool. But but I mean, I was born on January 30th, 1993. That was the first time I've been stereotyped. It started there, just being born black in America. It takes little time to be stereotyped against, man. Just being black and being a baby. Doctors already kind of figured that I didn't have a dad. Doctors already figured that I was born out of wedlock. Doctors already kind of made their judgment of me from the gate, and they make no. They do it every day. It's something that's just done every single day. They are sure to remind me.
Who's they?
Society, America,
Gotcha.
being black in America,
Yeah.
America reminds you that you're black every single day. It doesn't take a leap year. It doesn't take an off day. It is not void if you're at work. It's not void if you're at Starbucks or at Jamba Juice or
Watching TV.
watching the news, man. They make sure that you are the boogeyman. So being a black man in America, I know what the world sees of me, and it is reminded every single day. So I just want to start that.
Yeah. And going off of, firstly, thank you for sharing that, because I love that perspective of sharing your birth date and saying, like, that's the first time that you were ever stereotyped.
He knew it was deep.
Even though, well, I think it's a comment, though, for people to, like, feel, though, too, because you don't have, just because you're not hearing the stereotype doesn't mean that you're not being stereotyped. And I love that you said that, because it's true. Because we can feel that and we know that. So now when you were talking, I was visualizing the doctor taking you out, and even saying, like, in my visual, the doctor was a man, and how messed up that is, that it's a stereotype that the doctor is a man. Even just that alone. Why didn't I see this person as a woman? So just seeing that person taking you into this world with their hands and thinking, oh, well, as you were saying, like, daddy's not here, so this must, and just thinking about their brain thought, about the thoughts that might have gone through their head. I don't know. I can't speak for them, but just thinking of what might have gone through their head and seeing that that's still stereotype, even though it's not being said.
There was a painful attachment to that, too, for me. Like,
Well,
I did a joke right after it because I was trying to kind of comfort myself from it was very poetic what you said.
Yep.
Because you said you felt it when you were born. Or excuse me, it happened when you were born. And so you had not yet the ability potentially to feel that, but it had already started then.
Yeah.
And so you were born into stereotype, right? And so there's something that was really deep about that. And I think, first of all, I want to clean that up. I know that I maybe I shouldn't have placed that joke, because the reality of it is it struck me in a way that had part of my eye a little liquidy, right? Because of just feeling like, wow, when you are certain people, and I feel like this probably or likely or definitely happens with being a woman. You're already there's already something you were just born, and then there's already this that you're gonna grow into. You're gonna grow into a stereotype for others, and so yeah.
And then being a woman who's brown, and they say anything that they want. But again, people label me consistently. They're like, "Oh no, you're a black woman." I'm like, you didn't even get a chance. You don't even know my name yet. You don't even know my name yet, and you're already putting labels on me. You didn't even ask. You just demand that this label, whatever you so choose, you can brand me with. And that is something that I didn't know as a little infant that I was being born into, is a consistent reminder that you are not your own. Everybody else has something else to label you with, whatever that so be. So being able to choose to have the power back, like take that back and say, I know what you're trying to do, and I get that that's what's consistently been happening, but I don't allow you to do that.
Right. I'm curious, though. You know what I'm curious about is, so for you, okay, you're a person of color, not necessarily African American, a person of color, right? And if you don't know what a person of color is, look it up.
Look it up. Google
it. Oh, did we just give Google love on our show?
You did.
Oh, wow. Anyway, so right, Casey, that's the good, the bad, the ugly. What I'm really curious about is for you. Okay, so we listened to this clip that talked about how, so you know, you sound black or you talk black, and they were talking a little bit. They went a little bit deeper into what that means, and before we like even go into that, I'm immediately thinking, so it happens to someone black. Well, you're very articulate. And then I'm always having to figure out, first of all, I know that, but I'm always having to figure out, are you saying that as a compliment?
Yes,
in
right.
a way of just you enjoy how people talk or how people speak, and you're giving me that? Or is it just, oh, you're articulate because usually you niggas talk like this or that? I said nigger. I think that should work on the line. Look,
it's good.
they don't see me looking at the person like, is that okay that I said nigger? Anyway.
He says it 5 more times.
nigger. And so I'm always, so I know what that feels like as me and someone saying that, and how I have to struggle with, I have to immediately, and people say, well, why would you even go through all that thought? I'm not trying. It happens. Like you said, I'm articulate, and so then it automatically makes me think about what that means.
Yes.
And why you said it, and I wonder if you said it for this reason or that reason. And so I'm wondering with you, considering your so is there, for a woman, and I don't expect you to answer
Speak
on behalf
for
of
all women,
right, but as you being a woman, does if someone says that you're articulate, do you ever at some point feel like they're saying it because you're a woman, or does that not happen? I'm just wondering, does that pop up first in your mind like it does for an African American?
For me, it pops up of, is it because I'm a woman? Is it because of my color? Is it because of, what is it because? Because you're saying that for a reason. Because what that tells me is that you expected something different, and that you're surprised that I'm speaking the way that I am. So then I ask them. I ask people all the time, whatever they are perplexed by, I ask them why. Because I want to understand. I don't want to just assume. I want to leave the space for you to be open as well, and for you to be truthful. So I'll ask them, and actually my brother, my youngest brother, he always says, you speak white. I'm like, no, I do not speak white. I don't speak. There is no such thing as speaking white. If you mean I speak a certain way, I speak articulate. I articulate my words, or I'm a deep thinker. You don't have to be white in order to be that way. And so for me, it's hurtful in that you're saying that people aren't, this certain people, anyone outside of the whiteness is assumed to be not be able to do these things. And so you're dehumanizing us, like, and that's coming from my brother, you know? So it's like, we were talking about earlier, like the growth even within family, and it starts there and then it trickles out because there's so much freaking work. There's a lot of work, but it's not for me. I don't hate on that person, or I don't get mad in that I'm so frustrated I want to beat the crap out of you. I say what I feel. I go, that's hurtful, first of all. I also know that you don't know what you don't know. So if and by that I mean, like, you don't know that it hurts me because of these things.
What do you say? What do you think you would say? Because clearly, so one of the things about us on this show, right, is that we're activists and philanthropists and pro this and pro that. And so I think that sometimes the listeners are like, well, we agree with a lot of things and agree about a lot of things. And in this effort to try to find where these situations and circumstance add up to human beings kind of having some growth in that, I think that it sounds like we don't get spissed off, right?
Boy, and I do.
So, right. And so, and like we never had these moments of like being spissed off and needing to express from that. And so what I'm wondering is, like, I know how much you love humanity, and maybe you've always known that you've loved humanity. However, how do you think that you would have expressed yourself, I don't know, 5 years ago, when maybe, not presuming to know how woke or not awake or whatever you were at that time. I'm trying to figure out, what do you say to somebody when they ask you this and you weren't at the point where you are at now, where you have a philanthropic view of things, where you were like mother, father, what the hell are you saying?
My reaction actually was never that. It's actually more that now than it was then, because back then I always learned from my cultures to smile and everything's okay and sweep it under the rug, and even if it hurts your feelings, keep smiling.
As a culture or as a woman in the culture?
It was
curious.
Cultural, and it was culturally based, but also more so within women in that culture. Okay. So as a woman in this culture, I learned that that's what you do. You just keep it moving with a smile and don't let it affect you. So that's how I used to handle it, and just laugh it off, and it's all good and dandy. But now it's not, it ain't good and dandy, and I always knew that it wasn't good and dandy, and I make mention of it. I don't go all crazy. What people call crazy, and I'm like putting quotations because people still call me crazy.
Yeah, because listeners can't see those quotations.
Right, exactly.
They don't know that you're doing. We see the quote. They don't know you doing quotes.
I know.
Mariah.
That's why I gotta say quote.
What the hell are you doing? Okay.
Yeah, but it's not crazy. It's just speaking my mind.
Yes.
Use my voice and feel my feelings, and I'm a human being, and I feel like we should all have that right to be able to do those things. Speak your mind, feel your feelings, use your voice.
Julius, you work for an institution that provides people with a lot of wonderful things, not wanting to give that institution up. In case you called the wrong person cracker, and they like, I'm going to meet him there at his doorstep. I'm the cracker you got to worry about. No. So I'm just wondering, before you take us into our next selection of music and clip, I wonder for you, like, how does that make you feel when someone, and I want you to particularly, like, how does that make you feel when someone says that you talk white and they're black, the person who says it to you?
It doesn't make me feel a certain way. Like personally, I'm more concerned about them, not myself. Like that's just an agent that has been whitewashed, that has been brainwashed by a system. So that makes me more adamant, makes me more passionate about tearing down that system. So I don't take offense to it. I don't get upset at that person. It's not the person's fault. It's the system's fault for creating that thing, that zombie who's just doing what masters say. So we have the Kanye West, we have the Candace Owens, we have the Ben Carsons.
You're mentioning those as examples of?
Oh, I'm gonna get to it. They're agents. I can't be too upset at these tokens that these white people give the black community.
Those meaning those that you just mentioned, from your perspective.
The Steve Harveys, all of these tokens. The Steve Harveys, all of them.
Big Snoop Dogg. We gonna get right back into that in a minute, and you know what I mean. We gonna get back in that in a minute. So right now we're gonna get into this mix. Once again, you're here at Situations and Circumstance on KCBZRadio.com. Yeah.
Log on to kcbzradio.com and check the schedule for Situation and Circumstance Live, complete with music, live phone call access, and additional audio and programming. Anthony and TBT would love for you to be a part of the live broadcast and recording of Situation and Circumstance at kcbzradio.com.
Man, Shaft was a good movie. I watched that the other day.
Don't you say nothing about Steve Harvey.
Oh, no.
Don't you say nothing.
We got to save that little clip and
He's
play
my
that
favorite dude, but don't you say nothing about it.
The point is that we have been given black people these tokens, and it's an illusion of inclusion. And I'm not here for that. I don't believe, and I'm going to ask you a question. But I don't believe we have gone that far. I talk to my dad almost every day, and he was born in 53. And he tells me how often today looks like 63 and 73 and 83. So he's not caught up in the, oh, yeah, we got a black president. He's not caught up in the, well, Jay-Z's a billionaire. He's not caught up in that. And this is somebody who had to drink from segregated water fountains. This is somebody who had to get on a bus in the back. You know, this is not too far away, but we have this idea that we've grown so far, and I don't believe that. I don't believe that in one bit. We have been given people to give you that perception of it, but that's all part of the game. That's part of the ploy. It is like, yep, I'm going to just have them on the yo-yo, and they go get just a little far enough, but not too far. So I want to ask you, matter of fact, let's ask some callers if anybody's here. 502-509-5229.
That number again.
502-509-5229.
Oh, Julius.
Pick up your phone right now and dial it in one more time. It's
502-509-5229. Okay, or 0, whichever y'all want to use. I say like 510.
Right. Is there another way to say that? Oh,
510? Yeah.
Is there another way?
While they call, how do you see change?
Look, I'm in my 40s. And I'm not saying I'm in my 40s because I'm embarrassed to say which one of the 40s I am. It's just not all everybody's business. And I probably said it on a couple of shows, but here's the point. Mm-hmm. I'm in my 40s, and I remember what it feels like. In elementary, in the beginning years of elementary, we had to sit on the back of the bus too. And this was in America and California, and other people didn't have to. And we did. And so I tell you what, it felt a certain way having to do that. I get it. But let's do this. I really want to answer your question, but we have a few callers here. Let's take one of the callers, and then we'll revisit it. And so, caller, thank you. You're here at kcbzradio.com. You're on Situation and Circumstance. And Tell us your name and what you'd like to, or if you don't want to tell us your name, tell us where you're calling from and what you'd like to share with us today.
Hello, this is Auntie Nina calling from Walnut
Hi,
Creek,
Auntie
California.
Nina.
Hi, sweetheart. I'm a big fan of the show. Listen every chance I get. Love you guys.
Thank you.
She really does. She listens every week, and
I
she
feel
always
like
has
Black
something.
Panther, and I want to say, hey, Auntie.
Well, I wanted to make a comment.
Yes.
Being an African-American woman, I did grow up in Oakland. And I did grow up hearing a lot from fellow African-Americans that you speak white. But I never got that from anybody else. Not from white people or any other ethnicity. As a matter of fact, I actually turned up the white diction of when I was around white people to make them comfortable. So,
Well, thank
I
you.
just wanted to make that comment.
Yes, thank you. And again, you're calling from Oakland. That's in California in America?
Yeah, she's actually in Walnut
No, I'm
Creek right
calling
now.
from Walnut Creek.
Yeah,
Oh, Walnut Creek.
she grew
Look,
up
did I
in-
just
in-
stereotype you? Did I say
No,
Oakland? Because that's a place
Yeah.
where...
She said she grew up in Oakland, so you heard Oakland. Yeah.
Well, in a minute,
But-
it's not going to be a stereotype since
Auntie-
it's being gentrified, but that's another show.
Auntie, do you feel like that it's changed since then? That you feel like you said when you were.
Oh,
you
no,
said
I live in
Oakland?
Walnut Creek.
Oh, yeah.
I live in Walnut
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely
Wait,
turn
yeah,
it
what's
on
it-
when I'm out here.
Do they ever make comments or anything in Walnut Creek? Because I mean I've hung out with y'all and I've seen what your surrounding areas are like, and if for any of those who do not know what Walnut Creek is like, it looks very white. It looks very white. Just to say it plainly.
Yeah.
White like cracker
Yeah.
white or white like European American? Distinction.
European, I would say more Berkeley beatnik hippie white.
Okay, them was some of my favorite whites. Okay.
Yeah, they're very cool people here.
Okay. Well, thank you, Auntie, for calling in, and thank you for listening and being a fan of the show.
Yes, you are now part of the Situation and Circumstance family. Yeah!
All right, love you guys.
Hey,
Love you,
take it
Mariah.
Love you, Auntie. Bye.
Bye.
That was so nice, and it went right along with that. That's me right there. Is I've always had a fascination with words, and so I spent a lot of time. It doesn't mean I get them right all the time, and sometimes I purposely choose not to use them a certain way. But I love having the tools, the words as a tools to use whatever way I want. And so, all that to say, yes, I know what it feels like to be black, and I love what she just told us, because oftentimes the people, so white people, or excuse me, European American people at this point would say, you speak articulate or you speak well or that kind of thing, and sometimes it's pretty felt that it's because, hey, you're black and you're talking this way. But it's more hurtful for me, as I feel like our caller just said, that it's a little more hurtful when black people say it, because I don't feel like black people understand that when we say that you're speaking or talking black, you're basically saying that to speak correct is white and to speak incorrect is ignorance and black. And for me, it's more like, if a person's going to say I speak black, I don't mind them saying I speak black, because there is so it's almost like there's a stereotype that I'm I almost want to say okay with, but then in lieu of one of our clips, it's like, well, don't be okay even with it in a subtle way. But I have to say this. I do feel like African Americans, this way, I'm not actually traveling around the world and finding everyone who looks like me to say this. I believe African Americans, or Pan-Africans who live in America, I believe that when it comes to language, we invented cool. I believe that from those way back, and maybe someone who was born in 53, whether it's someone who was like Barry White or all these guys who not only had a deep voice, but they learned how to rap and tap and make words rhyme to get their point across and all these different things. I feel like we invented cool in that way. So there's a part of me that when someone says I'm talking black, I don't take offense to it, because part of me feels like when you say I'm talking black, it's because I'm talking cool.
I dig it.
Right? on the flip side of that, you're talking white. If someone black says it, it makes me feel like they're actually feeling like I'm not black enough because I'm choosing to use words that will get me what I need. And so I often have to teach people in some of my lines of work how to code switch. And I look at that more as a skill. And I look at it as an important skill. And so if I had it to do all over again, well, there's certainly, even on this radio show, we're talking different ways, and there's things I have to mute out. I don't believe it's making me or meaning that I'm fake because I'm muting it out.
Yeah.
I'm muting it out in order for the bigger picture to be had.
Yeah.
And the bigger picture is being able to reach a larger audience. And as a result of that, then I have to not watch in a way that changes the truth, but watch in a way that allows me to get into smaller crevices or larger places, if that makes sense.
That's a great way to put it.
Now, if it's you, and I'm cool with that. What I don't really like is if you have to fake, like you said, you don't feel like you're faking. So that's important. That's an important thing to note, because there are people who can talk a certain way and get the point across, but it's necessary for the opposite. We need a Nipsey Hussle to not code switch. We need a Nipsey Hussle to gang bang and to have all these tattoos and have face tattoos. And it's also necessary to have the opposite of that, who has the ability to naturally, not necessarily code switch, but who talks like that and don't feel fake.
Yeah.
So if you say like you're teaching people to code switch, if they're authentic with it, I'm for it, but I'm not for training black people or minorities to assimilate.
Which is different than code switch.
Right.
Code switching
is
not from my perspective, code switching is not a form of assimilation. Code switching means that I have a 10-year-old and he's at a school, right? And I mean, I don't have a 10-year-old.
Yeah,
all my kids are grown, but there is a 10-year-old that's at a school, and that 10-year-old is at that school, and he's black, and his name is Jamil. Just for sake of argument. It's not the real one, but just for sake of argument. And then Jamil's over there with Billy, and Billy's white. And Billy's part of the Bay Area where some of the people talk really similar in terms of how their vernacular. And so Billy, who's white, he says, they're getting ready to play basketball, and Billy says, well, what? You can't handle me. I'm so good with my hands. Billy's white, by the way. Yeah, I'm so good with my hands. I'll beat you every time. Look at this. And he goes down and he does a layup. Now, Jamil sees that, and he said, what do you mean? I'll murder you all over the court with this good talent I have. Now, when I just said that, many of the listeners right now, they didn't hear anything wrong with that, nor do I. But the site supervisor, the yard duty, the person who's there to take care of the kids that is on that playground, they heard that, and they heard him say murder in a climate that we have that made them feel like, well, I got to take you out of here because you just said you were going to murder somebody. Now, it's actually not that person's fault that they don't know that saying you'll murder somebody on the court is actually, hold on, is actually your way of saying, hey, I'm just saying I'm good, I'm enthused. All of our heroes on whether it's Golden State Warriors or whoever it is, they're, you heard the Lakers, and we could go on with that. But it's not to say that they didn't learn this from some things, but here's the point. She's taking him to the office to go see the principal, and she's saying, well, you just threatened somebody and said that you were going to murder him. And he's like, no, I didn't. So now she says, now you're lying. Well, the reason he's saying, no, I didn't, because when he said what he said, he didn't mean it that way. Right. And then for everyone in this room right now, I can tell it's like, well, you could tell that's not what was meant. She don't know that. She just hears a kid in an elementary school says, I'll murder you all over the court. So she's taking him to the office, right? And so she gets to the office, and the parents come, and all of those things happen, and then there's assistants that I bring in there to explain what just happened, and then the site supervisor / yard duty, they learned something healthy that they didn't know. They didn't know, like, oh, that's what that meant. How could they know? They weren't from that area, where people would say that to represent, this is how I'll beat you. Yeah. So what I had to teach this young child is that school is not the right place to say you'll murder someone on the court. he needed to be able to code switch and say, and I don't want to sound like code switching means not speak your truth. Code switching means that you actually have a set of skills, and being able to change the vernacular or being able to change the mood or that kind of thing is a skill that you may need. Because what I also grew up noticing is how my mom talked to us and everybody else. And then how she got on the phone when she was talking to the principal or to the bill collector or to the whoever.
Yeah.
And then I thought that was just a black thing. Then I realized that there was a bunch of people who, when they talked to certain people, they just changed the way at which they said things. Not that they should have had to do that.
Which is the point.
And I feel that.
Okay.
But I don't want to paint code switching as something. It should be taught in terms of knowing when it is appropriate to say something, and acknowledging that the power to be able to say it in 3 or 4 different ways is no different than knowing 3 or 4 different languages. So you get paid more because you're any race who also knows Spanish in America. You get paid more. Well, that's a skill. And I feel like in that same presence, being able to say things as African Americans, whether child or adults, and being able to switch things from this to that, and being able to talk to somebody who, whether they're on the streets or talk to somebody who's a rich dummy, because you can't talk to a rich dummy with ghetto talk if they don't know nothing about it.
Yep.
Not saying there's something wrong with ghetto talk, but you can't talk to a rich dummy.
A rich dummy ain't from the ghetto.
But
so, I mean, they might very well know. I mean, because that's also implying that, some colors are involved in that. The whole
not necessarily,
dummy.
because if
it
you're a rich
because
dummy
who's
and
to
you're
say
black,
that this rich exactly, but that's not stated. So to say like a rich dummy doesn't know ghetto talk kind of implies that where this rich dummy grew up wasn't from the ghetto, and we all know most black and Latino people are from the ghetto, and white people are more in affluent neighborhoods.
Let's retract it, because if I don't retract it, then because here we are at the situation and circumstance, right? Because then I can also say, well,
it could be Asian.
Right.
Yeah,
and
part of a system.
And
who benefit from white supremacy. So, yeah. That's,
or Indian or whatever.
Who still have anti-black in them. So,
and then it also, just by me saying what I said, could also represent, what's ghetto talk? I'm from the ghetto, yet people still said I sounded white.
Because
but I'm from the
right?
hood. I'm dopely from the hood. I done been through, I got a ghetto report card. You feel me? But that's still been said with me. So what is really ghetto talk? So there's a lot of other things that we can go with this, but I just don't want to leave it at like I think that there's a situation and circumstance where teaching someone what code switching is not to mask or take away from their intellectual property, but more so to say that with the premise and what we live in right now, and you're 10 years old, I don't want you to keep going around your school saying I'll murder people on the court, and having to when it's just inappropriate regardless of what color you are in a climate where kids are being killed by other kids in this climate.
It makes it, because I'm thinking about what you're saying, and it makes me feel weird, because then I think about, but you don't have to go and tell Billy not to say something in a certain way. Like, you don't have to tell a certain person when you come into this climate, you can't speak this way. You can't articulate your words this way. No one ever says that, but they do say you can't speak this way.
But how do we know that? Like, Billy was white and Jamil was black. And if Billy said I'll murder you all over the court, we don't know. That's the thing. Is there was a part of me that was like, oh, look at this yard duty supervisor who maybe had some diversity training, but clearly not enough, right? But then it's like, I really don't know that if Billy would have said, if it was in reverse and Jamil would have said the first part that I explained, and Billy later on would have said, I'll murder you all over.
Yeah.
I don't know that this person, to me, what I'd like to believe and what I felt in the moment was that anybody who said the word murder in elementary school, that was a kid that said, I will murder you all over the court. And I know this is how I'm saying it, right? When I said it earlier, I was like, I'll murder you all over the court. And when I explained it, nobody thought that that's what we were talking about. But now if I say, I'll murder you all over the court, she may have thought that even if Billy had said it.
I doubt it.
Because you doubt it, but you don't know what color. Here's the thing. No one in here has asked me what color the yard duty or the site supervisor was.
What did you say? You said that
I never
the
said
yard
what
duty.
color she was.
Well, I'm trying to get somewhere, but you said that the yard duty and teacher might not be from that background, that environment that Jamil was from, right? But you said Jamil was black. You said the yard duty and teacher might not be from that environment to know that slang.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that mean? Let's clarify.
Well, that means that there are individuals, regardless of their color, that don't grow up in the hood, that may not have heard those kinds of vernaculars, whether they're black or other. They hadn't heard someone say, "I'll murder you on the court." So there's rich black people right now living somewhere that have heard none of this language that we use in the hood. They haven't heard it. They're still black, but they haven't heard it. And then there's other cultures and colors living that same life that haven't heard it. And so if you're in a professional setting where you're there to care for people and you haven't heard it, then you don't know it. And so I'm not defending the person who didn't hear it in terms of I do believe there's other things that could have happened, like, hey, well, you don't know what was going on, so talk to the child or the person, and then you will know, right? So there's some talking and other things that could have happened, but just to say, they didn't know. And I hadn't said who they were.
Okay.
Situation and circumstance, Julius and Mariah
stereotypes.
and Mr. Class.
I think that's a great topic though to talk
stereotypes.
about because that goes with stereotyping and also is it a simulation? But you're making a clear distinction for you, Anthony, or Mr. Classiq.
All those is good. Call me anyone you want.
You're saying like code switching is not a simulation, whereas like I hear you, Julius, and you're like, I just want to make sure like. Because I'm hearing it, like I'm visualizing it too, and I'm visualizing like code switching and seeing like how it works in this world, and then at the same time I'm thinking, but is that why can't people just talk and then ask for understanding? Why can't people just talk however that they learned how to talk, and then when you meet those people, you just ask for understanding and not press judgment on them? And so that's why I'm torn between those two things because I see them both, and I feel them both, and it's interesting, and it goes with what you were saying with like tokens, right? So saying like oh wait, we got one black president, so it's good. So it's like it's putting like a nice word to things to make it like it's okay. But it's not okay. So that's what it's reminding me of. And so that's why I get code switching. I get it in our world. Do I agree with it? That's what I'm feeling right now.
And how can you agree with it unless we have defined it? Because nothing, out of those of us who are in this space right now, we have never had a conversation on air or off air what we believe code switching means in order to know how much so once I find out your definition, for instance, Julius, I might find out, you know what, I do agree, because now I know what you feel about it, right? If code switching exists in a dictionary, depending on who wrote that, is going to have everything to do with what we agree or not. Unless E40 wrote it, then we might agree if it's in his. I don't mind endorsing that, brother.
But that's why I like the last clip that we heard from Samuel L. Jackson about what can we do to help this stereotyping, to discontinue the perpetuation of it. And I love that this interviewer was asking these really hard-hitting questions to him, and it was quite uncomfortable because for some people, it can be very uncomfortable if you don't, I don't know if you've never heard these questions asked to you before, and just because in our world today, it just hasn't really changed much, as your dad was saying, Julius. But I love that things are, like Samuel L. Jackson said, having young people having people make film and TV shows about those lives, so that way people can learn about it. So there's this show that my friend Nadia, shout out to you, girl, My friend Nadia told me about Rami. It's on, I forget if it's on Hulu or something, whatever platform it's on. There's a show, Rami, and it talks about exactly what Samuel L. Jackson was saying. Is like some kids don't pray 7 times a day. Let's hear those stories. Let's see what it's like to like not live that stereotypical life, so that way people can learn about it. And so shows like Rami showing that life, so that way we can learn about it. And so my question is like, what do you feel how do you feel like we can help change this? Or do you feel like it's our duty? Or what about stereotyping? Like, how do we, this whole race obligation?
We will have to visit that conversation in the upcoming weeks, because it looks like, fortunately right now, thank you for posing that last question, and we want to pose that question to the listeners, and maybe we'll try to figure out how you can call in the next couple of weeks and give an answer to that question, which is, one more time, that question is?
What do we do? What are the next steps in this race obligation, and do we have one?
What are the excuse me? What are the next steps in this race obligation? And so, as always, I want to leave you something with what Michelle Obama said. Julius, would you like to say something to end this race obligation out really quick? You got 10 seconds. I know that's just a little bit of time.
I can't speak for everybody, but just black people, just love yourself. That's where we got to start. That's where our obligation starts.
Thank you for that. Michelle Obama said blacks are the most forgiving. And someone said, well, why do you say that? And she said, because they have had the most practice at it. And so, yes, and as always, we promise our listeners that we will continue to make beautiful mistakes. We embrace the opportunity afforded by our ancestors to speak, whether right or wrong, weak or strong. We be learning humans. And we are working on liberation and scaffolding a meaningful and fair existence for all. Till the next time, my netches. See you then.
Thank y'all.
Situation and circumstance. Fight for wisdom, not ignorance. Trying to avoid it is not a lonely dance. Can we see each other with only a glance? Situations and circumstances. Fight for wisdom, not ignorance. Trying to avoid it is not a lonely dance. Can we see each other with only a glance?
Cake mix and race mixes, matrix, kill the witches, 3 digits, made of 6s, KKK or white privilege, old spirits, blood riches, real hatred, fake forgiveness, skinny image, fat problems, I don't really know how we solve them, gods made us, kings gave us, 2 enslavers, 2 enslavers, castaways on railways, underground dark web pages, Marvel heroes, connect the zeros, connect the pharaohs, bone marrow, Egyptian princes, dark and ancient, preserve the patience, black and Haitian, white and Asian, British coaches, eat crustaceans, ocean roaches, Illuminati, inject the bodies, GMOs, drug hobbies, Aboriginal, Pan-African, old biblical, reincarnation, hip-hop playlists, vocal rangers, sexist wages, sex changes, the game of life, bullets fly, ruin nights, players clueless, kids' rights, humans fight, nature loses, hard of hearing, dolomite, Darwinism, Garvanite, hates a virus, terabytes, hard to live with, parasites, come on!
Situation and circumstance. Fight for wisdom, not